You're listening to Arizona Good Business Radio, featuring unique stories with leaders who believe the community is a central part of doing business. Join us on the journeys of entrepreneurs, local businesses, and champions of Arizona who believe working together, we can build stronger communities.
Welcome to Arizona Good Business Radio. We feature leaders in the Arizona business community working to build a lasting impact throughout our state through doing good business. I'm your host, Thomas Barr, Vice President, Business Development at Local First Arizona. If you don't know us, we're a statewide organization advocating for and celebrating locally owned businesses, and we're the largest local business coalition in North America. Crazy. We provide resources to thousands of small businesses while raising awareness of the benefits of building a strong local economy. I am super excited to be here today with three people, which we never do in the studio. We're packed house today. Kale, the Director of Sales and the current President of the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild, but he's Director of Sales at Oso Brewery. Andrew, the Deputy Director of the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild, and Brad, the Head of Production at Arizona Wilderness Brewing Company. As you can tell, we're going to talk about beer today. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks.
We can talk about other things too.
Yeah. What do you want to talk about coffee or something?
We're people too, you know.
Get into the weeds about coffee, yeah.
Well, welcome. Super excited to be here. Gosh, we've had such a long history at Local First with the brewery community. I've been doing this work for almost 11 years, and I can't remember a time when we weren't partners with the Craft Brewers Guild, that we weren't working with AZ Wilderness, that we weren't doing things with Oso Brewery, now distillery, all of the great things. And things have changed a lot in at least my 11 years. I know in the last 20 years in the brewery industry in Arizona. Andrew, I kind of want to start with you, but would love everybody's take. Where are we at today?
Where are we at with beer in Arizona? People ask it, is beer sales going down? Is everyone not drinking? Are they going to spirits and wine? And all of that is true. Arizona breweries' production levels are pretty level across the last few years. We feel like alcohol consumption stays pretty steady in America as a standard of
when times are good, people drink.
When
times are bad, people drink.
2.1 gallons of ethanol for each adult American every year, like since the 50s.
Wow.
So drinking isn't really changing that much. Non-alcoholic beer is a pretty hot topic right now. And it's kind of been found that people who are drinking non-alcoholic beer are doing both. So they're using it as like maybe a little slowdown. You don't see people getting into adulthood and saying, I'm going to start drinking all the non-alcoholic beers. It's people who are already part of the community and are finding either another occasion or just, hey, in the middle, I'm just going to have one of our NA IPAs.
Yeah,
Arizona.
Specifically, what we see a lot with our NA is the designated driver or whatever. They have one beer and then they'll switch to an NA when everyone else keeps drinking. So
right.
Yeah.
We've had 6 breweries open in Arizona in the last 2.5 months.
Oh, wow.
So the Arizona beer industry is really growing slowly and measured. We are 43rd in the nation for breweries per capita. There's a lot of space for Arizona to grow. We definitely punch above that level with some of our breweries' community involvement and with the variety of breweries that we have. So we've got breweries, a brand new one opened in Bisbee, another one opened in Show Low and Wickenburg. So we're reaching new communities, but we're also growing out in the communities we already serve, such as Pinnacle in Scottsdale and Slow Body in Tucson. So we really have a lot of choices for the consumer, and that just makes for a really healthy business community and people working together.
Yeah. And even though our per capita ranking is in the 40s, I feel like we could look directly at Oso's model and Wilderness's model of, you've got more than one location. You've expanded in intentional ways. You're very community driven sort of a thing. So Kale and Brad, can you tell us a little bit about, I guess the intentions that both of your breweries have had in both navigating the landscape of maybe changes in how people have been drinking or consuming beer products, but also like how your companies have grown. You've really picked out spaces that were really intentional for you. So Kale, maybe we start with you.
Yeah. We're up to like 47 locations now. We're kind of around 10, I think, actually.
Oh, that many. Okay.
Well, with 2 airport locations, I kind of count them.
They count.
It's an outlet. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Yeah.
I count 13.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's being, spread across the valley. Like every little community is different. And it's, Arizona is unique, I think, in a way where the way we're set up, where people think, like Phoenix, and it just kind of spreads out from this main, hub where, you go to other states and it's a little more spread out. But being that Phoenix is just vastly different than Tempe, than Gilbert, than Chandler. So everywhere we kind of spread our wings, like we do a pretty substantial job before we even open to like entrench ourselves in what that community and culture is. Most recent, we just opened up in Central and like Dunlap, in the Sunny Slope area.
Oh, cool.
And those people are super proud. There's like an old rich tradition down there.
The slope.
Yeah, man. I mean, I live over there, so I'm all about it, But it's, just hearing the neighbors and all this and the passion they have, it's just different than Gilbert,
Yeah.
Gilbert, downtown Gilbert is kind of like a, Old Town Scottsdale kind of vibe, and people go, but
Don't tell them that.
yeah, well, it's a lot more family friendly that way, which is where we need to be, right?
Yeah.
And so, just kind of, taking those measures, listening to the neighbors, listening to the community, before we open, like we do, a little research in the community before we decide where we want to maybe expand.
Yeah.
And that to us is a big benefit. During COVID, it just really emphasized the only reason I think that we did as well, or at least got by the way we did, is just our fanfare, our consumers were just like, I don't know what would happen if OSA wasn't here at the end of this,
Mhm.
and it really got loud with that, and people were so supportive, and that's just because of everything we put into our community, our neighboring schools, our neighboring shelters, or what have you. So we're really, big on that, but every little community has something different, which is great. And I hear it all. So the more we spread, the more I get to see what cool things people are doing, actually.
Yeah. And Brad, obviously Wilderness started in Gilbert, huge growth coming to downtown Phoenix. And that's like a staple of the Roosevelt Row community now. And congrats on the announcement of the McDowell Road expansion. So how have you, I guess, answer the same question, how has Wilderness approached it as well?
Yeah, I think they started it out as just trying to be like an extension of Arizona Wilderness, and it is, but they're two completely different places. The beer splits on like what we sell more of is vastly different.
Really?
La Ciudad was brewed for downtown, so it's like La Ciudad and lagers down there. Gilbert, it's Refuge IPA and kind of more the older school craft beer drinkers.
Okay.
And we have our Woodnote cellar too, which is just like a half mile from the Gilbert spot, and that's where we do all our mixed culture beer and different. It's like a barrel vibe there, winery vibe. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Right on. And you've both been in also production of retail for some time now. How is that different from operating the breweries day to day?
I don't run any of the retail, but we try to be intentional with all of that stuff, so make it fit on brand. It's not a huge part of what we do.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the things that do well, like specific shirts, we're always surprised.
Yeah.
So the ones like, oh, why isn't everyone buying this one? Oh, everyone loved that one.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, we were talking a little bit before about how when I had first, I think, started a partnership with AZ Craft Brewers, I don't know, and it wasn't our first partnership, but we had a relationship, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, and we were working with like 53 breweries, something like that. You let me know that's over 100 now, right?
Yeah.
So how many breweries, microbreweries, or how do we define it in Arizona, and how many is the Craft Brewers Guild working with now?
Yeah, it is tough to define, because do you call Oso or Wilderness one brewery, or do you call them 13? So we have 109 brewing companies.
Okay.
We've got over 170 locations that you can find branded with those breweries' names where they're serving their beer.
Cool.
Some of them have food, some of them don't. When there were 50 breweries, man, it was a whole different thing. But also, those breweries are the ones that are producing the most now. And the ones that have opened since are definitely more local. We serve our neighborhood. You're
Bootstrapped,
often
yeah.
finding the owners bartending
Yeah.
or brewing or both, and some in the morning and some at night. I mean, our members, more than 75% produce less than 2,000 barrels, which is not a lot of beer. And 50% produce less than 1,000 barrels. So if you compare that with Santan at 40,000 and Huss at 29,000, you can see the difference between the distribution breweries and what their model is compared to the smaller breweries. And the smaller breweries now have packaging because they want to sell beer to go at their location. During COVID, coming in and filling up growlers really just didn't cut it anymore. You could do some, but people want to come in, grab a case of beer and just leave. So getting more of our breweries into packaging was a huge part of what happened to the industry over COVID. Before that, there was maybe 7 or 8 that did legit packaging, and now half at least.
Oh, crazy.
A lot of the canning line manufacturers kind of made it easier and cheaper for smaller breweries to bring in a canning line and do it themselves. There was the mobile packaging thing. Mobile West was the big one in Arizona for a while. But now mostly like it's cheaper and more effective to buy a tiny little Gosling canning line. That's what we have. So
Gotcha.
And there's a local canning line manufacturer. I mean, Cano, that's one of our allied members, but they have probably 15 or 20 canning lines throughout the state.
Okay.
And they go, international even. So the availability of those lines is something, because pre-pandemic, you would wait 6 months or more to get a canning line. They didn't just have them sitting around. They were all custom built. It's a more industrial situation now. They've simplified the lines and they just made it easier to do. So
yeah, for sure.
Well, to go back a little bit on, what it's kind of a business model really is, I mean, you have pre-prohibition and, people were making their own juice here and there. And, like if you had a car, that was a luxury life, right? So people were stuck to their little neighborhoods. And then all of a sudden you couldn't do that. And the ones that survived are, your big conglomerates. But now you see, there's a new brewery opened up in Heber. That's probably the only one they need. It's small, but it's like you just have your little local brewery. They're not set up to do this huge distribution. They don't really care to do that huge distribution thing.
Yeah.
There are their own nightmares with being in a distribution. But at the same time, it's just, you kind of pick your lane and stick to it.
Sure.
So to see little breweries open up around the valley to service their little neighborhood is super rad.
Yeah. And small rural Arizona is obviously very different, right? Like they can only do so much. I remember I was talking to a guy one time, I forget which town he was in. He owned like a yarn company, and we were trying to help him like grow his business or whatever, and we were giving him all these ideas and stuff, and he sat back and he's just like, yeah, but then I'd run out of yarn.
Yeah.
I was like, all right,
that needs to be a t-shirt. I think that would be so awesome. But then I'd run out of yarn.
What would I do then? No. So one of the things I love about the beer community, and you all probably love too, is just like that there is just like it's community, right? I remember years ago, it was maybe 7 years ago or so, before I think Wren House started to really make a name for themselves. It was kind of this, like you had to kind of know it was there, or you were like flying by on the road.
I still do.
Yeah. It's just like
turn around.
That was back. It, like, and so occasionally I would like have like a happy hour with somebody there and be like, oh, let me show you this space. Maybe never heard of it. And we went there one time. It was like a 4:30 meeting on like a Thursday or something. I forget. And we walked in, and all of you guys are having a meeting, like you're like quarterly or monthly, like get together of all the breweries. And I was like, okay, I guess this place got popular, but like we realized in the moment, like it was like your get together or whatever.
Mhm.
How do you guys still do those? Like how often, like how connected, or is there like a group text? Like, like how does it all work?
There is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
our
There is.
we have a board of 9 board of directors, and there's a lot of communication on that. We're talking with our board of directors daily, pretty much. There's a lot to do. I mean, there are existential threats. There are literal threats to people wanting to change the way that breweries can sell their product, and then there's the new types of things that breweries can make. So seltzers, is that a beer? Is it not a beer? Can breweries make it? Can they not? We have to figure all that stuff out. And in the most legalized business in the world, we have to make sure that we're protecting our members from problems that might come up just from putting the wrong stuff in a beer.
Yeah.
So we did change the definition of beer in Arizona statutes, because if you put beer in a barrel and there's already whiskey in that barrel, you're fortifying beer, and that's illegal. So even if you dump any liquid out, there's still spirit in there, and there could be an argument made that you're fortifying the beer. So we have to change the law to say beer that is stored or fermented or treated in a barrel is still beer. And there are little things like that all the time.
Yeah, it's there. You know, I don't want to say we're like always under attack, but it's always preservation on what we have and looking into the future on what we could have. And you know, having that option and being able to pivot with a culture that is continuously pivoting is very important. And so, you know, the guild provides a lot of benefit to, you know, those things where, you know, they're sitting with, you know, lobbyists and all that just to, again, maintain or see what might be coming around to, you know, help or either hinder our industry. You know, there was a lot of cases during COVID where some of these breweries were just shut down and they couldn't do anything. You know, Nevada was one, and they're like, we just can't do anything right now.
Wow.
But, you know, our guild came to bat and was like, no, beer is essential, and kept us open, able to, you know, get by that. And those are things that, you know, some people don't really understand, you know, when it comes to, you know, are you part of a union or whatever? There are some benefits, obviously. But when you look deeper into it, you'll see that there's a lot more things that is deeper than on the surface. And so for that, just the unity being behind the guild for everybody, whether you're in Heber or Yuma, you know, you're not necessarily here at the Capitol trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
It's statewide.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, you know, at bats on their behalf. So that's pretty rad.
Got it.
More like superficial stuff with the guild, all these mixers and stuff that we do. Like you create relationships and you network, and like simpler things like, oh, I don't have any dextrose right now. I need some corn sugar from somebody. I call Gully from 12 West. He's like, oh yeah, I got a bag. So it kind of fosters those relationships as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
I had someone call me on Saturday morning and said, I'm doing a canning run today and I'm 100 lids short for my cans.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone that can give me some? On Saturday morning, this is 9:30. And he said, we're going to start canning at 11. And we got some lids there. So, you know, it's other breweries working with them saying like, just catch me back up whenever you can. Right.
Yeah.
And
we're all neighbors. You need some sugar. Here's some sugar. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
You need some oats. All right, fine. Yeah.
So a common conversation that we have all the time is and just expanding it out, the restaurant industry, the food and dining space has been and continues to be a difficult space to operate in. You've got staff retention and hiring challenges, cost of doing business challenges. Shrinking that down into the brewery industry, what does that look like for all of you? Is it just as hard to run a brewery as it is to run a brew pub? Like what comes into that, and what's at play right now for operating, you know, 13 or 11 location? I forget what number we landed on.
me too.
Wilderness expanding to another location. Like do you find that being a locally owned brewery like sets you apart and differentiates you just from the hospitality industry in general? Or like, do you struggle with the same challenges that the industry does in general?
No, I think we're dealing with some of those challenges right now. When money gets tight with people, inflation hits, they keep drinking beer. They just might not go get a luxury IPA at a craft brewery. So we're dealing with that like right now. It's tough. People aren't going out as much anymore. So you gotta find ways to incentivize people to come in, holding events, doing discount deals, whatever you have to do to bring those people back.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's, you know, you kind of mentioned Rent House before, you know, I mean, there's a lot of times I kind of sometimes maybe daydream about like, oh, that must be easy, you know, just to serve beer. Having a restaurant and a brewery has its own challenges because the restaurant we kind of separate it a lot. There's, we call it production, you know, for the brewery side, and then you have the restaurant side, like any other restaurant. While the restaurant carries its own challenges, you know, the breweries for us is not so bad. We don't really have turnover, really. I mean,
do you have ever had?
Yeah,
I don't know anyone that's left.
Yeah, I like to say, you know, you treat your people well. There's no reason for them to leave. But also, I mean, just, you know, brewing beer and there's not really anyone breathing down your neck because not everyone could do this. A little more specialized in a way.
Yeah.
So getting into that world is, you know, like, well, you could get somebody else to do it and that's fine. There are some people who are eager to do it, but knowledge is power. So, you know, a lot of our breweries are very smart. We put a lot into education. We allow them to go continual growth. We just had a brewer went to Chicago for 2 weeks just to learn about, you know, further learn about IPAs.
Cool.
And then he brings that back, shares with the team, stuff like that. So yeah, on the beer side, a lot different. I think our biggest turnover is like our delivery driver, which I don't blame them at all, because slinging around, you know, 50 half barrel kegs a day is, you know,
and that's, I mean, just the delivery industry in general is changing a ton too in its infrastructure. So yeah, man, no turnover at all. Like there was one.
No, honestly, we promote within.
That's wild.
Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, we promote within, and then people choose to leave. Like, I don't think we've really fired a brewer,
and I don't even know if anyone leaves, do they?
Yeah,
I mean, I know all these
left.
guys, and they're all still there.
It's been like 12 years for me.
I think my cousin still works at the PV location, Zach Benitez. So shout out to him. Yeah.
Have you seen Zach and I throw beer?
No.
Oh, we have. He used to be my bar back.
Okay.
Well, he started a bar back. That was a bartender, but he was my original bar back. But we have this trick where, you know, I'll pour beer on one side of the bar and I'll flip it to him. You know, I get a little coaster and it'll flip and rotate. I can show you the video later. And that's me and Zach. We still got it. Like, I just did it the other week after years. Like, some buddies were like, no way you could do that. I'm like, Zach, you want to try? He's like, yeah, sure. But I also gave him a little PTSD because I would whistle. So I'd bartend and he'd, you know, bar back, clean up stuff. But I would whistle. And if I was done with my cup, I would just I'd be like, and I would throw it. And that's all I would do. But he knew to turn around because something was coming. And so he'd always turn around and catch something. Yeah. And we had a very good chemistry. But
so we were joking before we started that when we go to do media, when you get a call from media to do like a TV segment or something, you've got like no time. It's like 60 seconds. And I recently saw Zach's dad, my uncle Tijuan, and he was just like, dude, next time you go on TV, you got to shout me out. So Tijuan, this is it. Like, I'm not going to do it on live TV, but this is your shout out.
There you go.
So there you go.
Covered. Check.
Well, back to the industry in general, Andrew. Where are we headed? What are the big issues at hand or challenges, and or do you expect 6 more breweries in the next 2.5 months? Like, are we going to keep building and growing? Do you see it plateauing? Like, where is the industry going in Arizona in general?
Right now, there are a lot of breweries that are hitting that 7 to 10 year age where leases are coming up and people life changes in 10 years. And if you're a small neighborhood brewery and you've been absolutely like hammering for 10 years, maybe you're tired. Maybe you've got some kids that are 3 or 4 years old and you're like, I got to step back. My lease is coming up. They're tripling the rent. What am I going to do? Maybe it's time for me to call this off. We do expect to see some closings. I don't have any like imminent, but that's always something that's coming up, especially at this cycle of age of businesses in our industry. And I have at least 3 more that are going to open this year.
Okay.
I don't think that we're going to see that in 2025. I think this may be an anomaly, but it's certainly different from the rest of the country and what they're seeing happen. So we tend to be about 5 years behind the rest of the country on everything.
true.
And so right now, everything's pretty good and groovy. I think it leaves some space for us to learn from what other people are doing and maybe avoid some of the pitfalls.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. If you're 5 years behind, you might be 5 years behind a lot of mistakes too.
Right.
Yeah.
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 And then there is the overarching question I always get of cannabis. What is cannabis doing to the industry? Young people are drinking less. This is true. Have they traded to cannabis? I can only speak for my 2 children, and yes. They are 21 and 23, and although they've both worked at breweries and one still does, their focus is on community and like hanging out. But the biggest threat that cannabis has for the overall hospitality industry is that in order to use those products you pick up at a dispensary, which, another side note, you have to go through like security to get in. A lot of people avoid it just for that reason. I don't recommend that. I think you should give it a shot, but that's me.
On the grid, man. You don't want to be on the grid.
Yeah.
This is recorded. No,
I know.
Gotcha. Bring them in, boys.
But the bigger thing is that you have to use it in your home. So you're not going out as much simply for the fact that you say, hey, I'm going to do this today. So trying to work around that, work with that, find ways to potentially hemp-based THC is something that's blowing up in Minnesota and Illinois and some other states where craft beer breweries are making hemp-based THC products and bringing it more into the mainstream. And
they're not
retail.
Intersecting the two. It's not.
You can't have alcohol and THC together, but you could make them as 2 separate products and have them available. Yeah. And if that goes into the standard restaurant, bar, retail space, I think it just leaves more opportunities for people to, hey, I don't really want to drink. There's a lot of people that don't drink, but they will use cannabis to bring them back out and get them socializing more in our spaces.
Interesting.
So it's and again, that's bringing a whole new bunch of challenges to the guild and how we work through that.
Interesting.
I don't worry about the younger generation drinking too much because craft beer is kind of, it's an evolution as you're drinking, right? Most people don't come out of the gates and like, oh, I'm going to crush IPAs. Like they usually start with the light beers and then you kind of, if they're into it, they start graduating up.
Yeah.
So I think it's more the demographic of 25 to 30 that we kind of want to capture. And hopefully we hold that demographic through their whole life cycle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Their drinking journey.
Their drinking journey. Yeah.
Well, I mean, craft beer didn't really exist when I was a kid. So, I mean,
out here.
Here at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and craft beer really, one of the essences of craft is innovation and flavor. So we've gotten a lot of people saying, oh, that craft beer, that brings a lot of flavor and new stuff to me all the time. And they're finding that in alternative adult beverage products too. So we can't just say, okay, we've done everything. Let's just keep doing the same thing we're doing. And RTDs are doing that. And wine, like Beatbox, come on, they're like huge. And why is that? Because flavors, like you're not just drinking a box of wine, you're drinking fruity wines and punches and all kinds of stuff. And Fireball made by
Is Fireball still around?
yeah.
Oh,
it's around, baby.
Oh,
it's
man.
sticky.
So
Abolish that.
us continuing to innovate is really the key to
Yeah.
craft beer maintaining where we're at.
Sure. So I guess question for the group in general is kind of where do you see the breweries engaging with I guess those changes in the markets? Like, are you doing anything specific? Are you leaning into certain beers and then testing out things in the background to see how they do at the same time? How does that work for Wilderness?
We're always trying new things, trying to try new beers while still keeping our core stuff going on. And that's kind of, for a brewer, that's my perspective. That's natural. Like it's hard for me to like, oh, this beer is doing really well, but it'll be a little bit better if I dry hopped it this much more.
Yeah.
So like I'm always trying to innovate and create the next new thing while still holding to what we've always done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're all on top of, and even with the guild's help, is what the trends are. They might start on another side of the country. And again, we're about 5 years behind, but we do take notice and we do see where, trends are. And being out here, you talk to people who are from, Oregon or whatever, like just our beers hit different in Arizona. I mean, we have the sun all day, every day for the most part. And, we have different styles, different beers. Like, sour beers out here are a lot more popular than they are in other parts of the country because it's a little bit crisper. It's a little bit, has that tartness, stuff like that. So we are looking into those. ABV is always a game where it's like, how strong do we make it? How light do we make it? It's like, oh, it's 3%. Then people are like, why am I even drinking beer? I mean, okay, fine. That's fine. So there's just a lot of, back and forth internally on where we want to land, but we are definitely always seeking, like non-alcoholic beer. What a waste of a tap line. Well, okay, there's some benefits. Oh, okay, it's growing, and then it just kind of, snowballs from there, and
Yeah.
see it.
And I don't think it's a bad thing that Arizona in craft beer is behind, 5 to 6 years. Because in Oregon, like Portland is entrenched. Like they have a craft beer community that's decades old. So it's hard for a new place to come in.
Yeah.
It's hard for stuff to really change. Wisconsin's like the same way. California's the same way. So we're kind of developing that community as we go. And it's a transplant state, right? So like we're getting all those things from different places.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. That's why I tell everybody about Arizona, doing business in Arizona in general when they ask. It's like, I feel compared to those other cities, there's like less rings to kiss and like red tape to jump through to like get something started. It's pretty easy to tap in. You can be
tap in. Nice.
There you go. You can be 2 to 3 people away from the person you need to get to pretty quickly if you want to like get something started. So I totally agree.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. Question back to the like potential of breweries closing in the I don't know how many years. Is there conversation at all regarding what Barrio Brewing has done and transitioned to becoming employee owned? Is that something of conversation at all?
It's not a trend we see in a big way right now.
Okay.
What they did was amazing. I don't really see, and they had been around for at least 15, maybe 25 years before they actually made that move.
Yeah.
So we're not really there yet. Like back in the day, New Belgium did that.
Yeah.
Right. So they're definitely going to be a larger brewery with a lot more already existing capital investments that are rolling over. A lot of our breweries are just not that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Modern Times did it too, and that was kind of the start of them going bankrupt.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Other reasons. Yeah.
Other reasons, but yeah, that was
Bad moves all around. Well, cool. Well, the last thing I wanted to talk about is I know that all of you have been involved in the Arizona Fall Festival for years and years and years. We're coming back November 9th this year at Hance Park. We just love having the brewery community come out. It's so fun. Wanted to just get your perspectives, why you love coming out every year, why it's a meaningful thing to you. Like I was saying before the show, that you have so many options, you get so many requests to participate in things, and it takes your time and your staff to invest in being there that day. Anything to share about that?
I'll go because I love it. All right. Well, one, I'm always about $100 deep when I like see the Zia tent because I'm always up in there buying some records. But I mean, we try, even as when we do other beer festivals, just to keep it local and in itself. But like what you guys have done year in and year out, even when we were one brewery, we would show up. But it's the amount of people that come out, the support you have for each other, the connections we make on not a customer level, but other vendors out there that are, interested, or, we have collaborative ideas on how to use that. Because we're there hours before the general public. So we all sit around and talk and, and kind of network that way. But just to highlight what Arizona's doing, like, this is a botched story, but, somebody coming out from San Diego, be like, oh, you know what Arizona needs is good pizza. It's like, well, hold on a minute. Yeah, have you ever heard of Pizzeria Bianco before?
They just got ranked like best pizza in the world too.
Yeah. And it's like people think that we need stuff. And that's fair. They think it's Wild West out here. Like you're saying, sometimes it's not so hard to get things done. But we're actually like, we talk a lot, we're not like, hey, welcome, like we might be a little like hard up front kind of thing, but like we know what's going on. We're very receptive to small business getting going. But my experiences with going to that is, just to see everybody there to support local and to thrive and to see the community. Because you have, your downtown kind of vibes, you have your East Valley, whatever it might be. Like it's all over, the state to represent like what's, small business can do. And specifically for the breweries to highlight them and to have a band and to have like this, relaxation area in downtown. So hopefully it's easier for everyone to get down to. It's a day out in the sun that's, usually pretty not hot, it's just the weather's nice. It's one of the best festivals I go to where I can see the growth of what Arizona's doing, because I can't possibly keep up with all of it. But when I show up there, I get a better, finger on the pulse on, where we're at and what, what's going on. That's really rad.
Love it. I don't think anybody can top that. So
I've never been. This is my second year in Arizona. So
I'll
have to make it out.
Okay, cool.
We are going to have a guild booth there this year for the first time.
Heck yeah.
So I'm pretty stoked to be part of it, especially after hearing what Kale had to say. Like, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be super cool.
Right on. Well, thank you guys for being here today. This is awesome. Hope if you're listening that you go visit OSO, you go visit AZ Wilderness and you check out the 107 unique
today
craft breweries in Arizona, or one of the 100 and many locations.
Right.
And just always remember to reach out and connect with your local businesses in your neighborhood. So appreciate everything Craft Brewers Guild does and all you guys do for the community. Thanks so much for being here. Anything to leave the listeners with?
Well, I remember the first time when I was working at Perch. So two things. One, I was at the Perch for my first brewing job, and I knew that we had a 300-seat restaurant. Not everyone's drinking beer. So we wanted to make sure that cocktail drinkers and wine drinkers got an opportunity to try some beer that they never would think was beer. So that was why sours were a big thing when I was working there, so that we could bring cocktail drinkers into the beer fold. Mm-hmm. Something that I always thought about. And then my first time that I ever kegged up a beer, I had been learning from podcasts and watching videos and never worked in a brewery before. So my beer's ready to go. It's in the bright tank. It's carved. And I thought, how do I put it in a keg? There's not a lot of videos and podcasts about how to put beer in a keg. Yeah. So I called up John at Wilderness and I said, John, I have this beer ready, but I don't know how to get it out. And he just said, hold on, I'll come right over. So he jumped in his car and zipped down and helped me keg up my first beer. So I thought that was a great story about how the community works together.
Love it.
And to go with that, John helping you out, when Wilderness was opening their doors, they were kind of getting low on their finances, and OSO actually helped them with their first order of grain.
Oh, wow.
So that they could start producing beer. So
that's cool.
It's just very serendipitous that, this is a culture that we create, is helping each other. We're not against each other. We want more, and we, more neighbors, more brothers, sisters in the communities. Pretty rad. So
yeah,
love it. Cool. Well, we hope everyone listening was inspired today, listening to our business community working to leave a legacy in Arizona through doing great business. Want to thank our sponsor, Phoenix Business Radio X, for always hosting us, and for all of our partners, including the Arizona Craft Brewers Guild. This is Thomas Barr from Local First, reminding you that if we want to build a better Arizona, we need to connect deeply with the local businesses that make us proud to call this place home.
Thank you for listening to Arizona Good Business Radio with Local First Arizona, where entrepreneurs and local businesses come together to build stronger communities. We hope your business is inspired to take part in building a better Arizona.